Don't turn around. She's right behind you. That's what Julian whispered, pressing a champagne glass into my hand. His voice had that edge, the kind people use when something awkward is about to explode. I didn't have to ask who she was. There are moments when your heart doesn't pound faster. It just stops altogether. Freezes mid-beat like it's bracing for impact. That's what mine did. I stared ahead at the string quartet pretending to enjoy themselves, focused on the violinist's bow, as if I hadn't just time-traveled into a moment I swore I'd never be in again. Behind me was the woman who once promised to grow old with me, and then decided to fast-forward through the rest of our life without me. I could smell her perfume before I heard her voice. Still the same. Citrus and something expensive. She didn't speak right away. She just stood there. Too long. Too silent. Too close. Then she said it. Is that really you? The sound of her voice cracked something in me I didn't even know was still breakable. She sounded stunned. Like I was a ghost. Like I wasn't supposed to exist outside her memory. I turned slowly. She looked different. Not older. Just manufactured. New hair color. Sharper angles. That polished, hollow version of someone who gets too good at pretending they're fine. I wanted to ask if she ever found what she was chasing. But I didn't. Because her eyes were already filling. Her lip was already trembling. And in the next 5 seconds, in front of her executives, her interns, her new boyfriend, and a dozen people who had no idea who I was, she completely broke down. Right there. At her own party. And me? I didn't even blink. The moment her mascara streaked down her cheeks, silence spread like a virus through the ballroom. At first, no one realized what was happening. Laughter dimmed. Wine glasses hovered midair. One of her co-workers even laughed awkwardly, assuming it was some kind of joke. It wasn't. Chelsea's breath hitched like she'd been punched in the ribs, and then she just crumbled. Right there, next to the ice sculpture shaped like the company logo. I didn't say a word. I didn't move. I just watched as the woman who told me I was holding her back now looked like the floor had dropped out from under her heels. Her manager, some tall guy in a navy suit, rushed over with that corporate, "Is everything okay?" panic, trying to herd her toward the nearest exit. But she waved him off, shaking her head as she stared at me like she was seeing the ghost of every choice she regretted. And maybe she was. Because here's the part she didn't know. I wasn't supposed to be there. Not at her party. Not in her city. Not even in her orbit anymore. But life's funny like that. See, 2 weeks before that night, I got an email I almost deleted. It was from a woman named Diana, a creative director at a branding firm. Said she'd seen my product design work through a recommendation I didn't even know existed. Said they were desperate for someone with an uncluttered, emotionally driven eye. Normally, I wouldn't have responded. I don't check LinkedIn often, and I definitely don't take meetings with people I've never heard of. But something in the timing felt weird. I said yes. The office was downtown, all glass walls and minimalist couches. While I was waiting in the lobby, flipping through a magazine I didn't understand, Diana came out and offered me a sparkling water like I was already hired. 20 minutes later, she said they were co-hosting a holiday gala with a client company, and that if I agreed to the freelance contract, it would start that weekend at the event. Still, I didn't know. Not until she handed me the name of the partnering firm. Linden and Rowe Financial. Chelsea's firm. The same one she left me for. The one she used to talk about like it was her golden ticket. The one that took her from me. I froze. Diana kept talking, totally unaware that my brain had been struck by lightning. That's when I realized I hadn't thought about her in weeks. Not consciously. I hadn't stalked her socials. I hadn't typed her name into Google. I hadn't cried in the shower like I used to. But now, the universe was throwing me into her world like a brick through a window. I said yes. Not to see her. Not exactly. I told myself I just wanted to do the job. I told myself it was just coincidence. But the truth? The truth was, I wanted her to see me. Just once. Not the wreck she left behind. Not the guy who begged her to stay while she packed her things in silence. I wanted her to see that I survived. And maybe, that I'd become someone she couldn't ignore. So I went. I wore black. Not because it was classy. Because I wanted to feel invisible until I chose not to be. I stayed near the back, nodding politely at everyone, sipping whatever was handed to me, all while waiting for that one collision fate had clearly been planning for years. And when it happened, when Chelsea saw me from across the room, it was like someone sliced the music in half. Her eyes locked onto mine, and something inside her broke wide open. The same woman who used to scold me for crying during sad movies now looked like a glass of red wine shaking on the edge of a table. And all I did was nod. Because what do you say to the person who deleted you like an old file? Only to realize 3 years later, you were the only thing that ever made them real. I hadn't said a single word yet, but my silence was the loudest thing in the room. She didn't run at first. That would have been too human for someone like Chelsea. She walked, chin up, heels clicking fast, but measured, like if she just got far enough away from me, no one would notice she was breaking. But I noticed. Everyone did. I kept my eyes on the untouched glass in my hand. It was sparkling cider. Someone had warned me ahead of time the event was dry, which made the tension feel even louder. No wine to dull it. No excuses to stumble into forgetfulness. Just clarity and consequences. Diana approached from the side, her eyes darting between me and the direction Chelsea had gone. What was that about? She asked cautiously, clearly trying to read the room without stepping into the emotional minefield. I just shook my head. Old history. She didn't press. Thank God. But my phone buzzed in my pocket, and I already knew. I didn't want to look. I wasn't ready to look. But like some cursed reflex, I pulled it out anyway. Chelsea, work contact. Can we talk? Please. 3 minutes later. I didn't know you'd be here. I'm sorry. Then. Please, Darren. Just 2 minutes. I didn't respond. I wasn't trying to be cruel, though I'm sure it looked that way. I was just frozen. How do you respond to a woman who left you like you were the flu? Something inconvenient she just needed to recover from. And now, 3 years later, she wants 2 minutes? Back then, I would have given her hours. Hell, I would have offered my whole future. But the man she left behind doesn't exist anymore. And the man standing here wasn't sure if 2 minutes with her would heal something, or reopen everything he buried. I put the phone away and walked toward the back exit. Let me be clear, I wasn't trying to escape. I just needed air. Space. The ballroom had turned into a stage, and I didn't want to be anyone's performance. But just as I reached the doors, I heard footsteps rushing behind me. I didn't even have to turn around. Darren, please, just wait. I turned slowly. She was standing there, shoulders shaking, her clutch bag clutched so tightly I thought it might split at the seams. Her voice cracked as she said my name again, like saying it twice might undo what she'd done to it. I didn't speak. She stepped closer, and for the first time in 3 years, I saw fear in her eyes. Not fear of me. Fear that maybe, just maybe, she no longer had access to the version of me she thought would always be there. Why didn't you respond? She asked softly. I didn't have anything to say, I replied. Her lip trembled. You look different. That made me laugh. A short, bitter sound I didn't expect. That's what happens when someone tears you apart. You come back stitched differently. She blinked fast, like she wasn't expecting me to be this blunt, like I was supposed to melt the second she appeared. I thought you left the city, she murmured. I did. Then why are you here? That question. That's when it hit me. She still thought the world revolved around her. That my existence in her space must mean I had unfinished business with her. She didn't even consider that I might have been invited, that I might be doing something valuable, that maybe, just maybe, this world she thought she owned had made room for me, too. I was hired, I said. Your company doesn't know. I don't work for them. I'm with the branding firm. I'm just doing my job. The look on her face cracked something wide open. Like for the first time, she realized I hadn't come to see her. I had come despite her. You're working with Diana? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I nodded. A beat passed. Then she said the one thing I never expected. I still think about you. I stood very still. You know, I said quietly, I used to wish for that. Back when you left, I used to pray that one day you'd remember what you walked away from. I looked her straight in the eyes. But not anymore. Then I turned and left her standing there, in the back hallway of a building she once said was the beginning of her real life, wiping tears off a face I no longer recognized. I didn't expect to see her again. Not the next day. Not the next week. I figured she'd cry it out, post something vague on Instagram, maybe drunk text me one night with a quote about closure. But Chelsea never followed the script. Not when we were married, and certainly not now. I got to the office late the next morning. The gala had run over time, and I'd stayed up most of the night walking the city. Not thinking, just decompressing, letting everything soak in. The look on her face. The fact that she still remembered me. The way she said I still think about you like it was supposed to fix anything. It didn't. My body was still buzzing when I stepped into the conference room on the 14th floor for our project wrap-up. The team was already halfway through a briefing. Diana gave me a nod, her usual polished calm, and I took the empty seat near the window like I hadn't just witnessed my ex-wife unravel in a designer dress 12 hours earlier. 10 minutes in, the door opened, and there she was, Chelsea, hair pulled back, gray coat draped over her arm, still wearing last night's red heels, as if she'd walked straight from regret into my meeting. The room froze. Diana blinked in confusion. Hi? I'm so sorry to interrupt, Chelsea said quickly, eyes darting between everyone like she hadn't already hijacked the energy in the room. Could I speak to Darren? It'll only take a moment. Every head turned toward me. I wanted to disappear. I could feel the blood drain from my face. I'd managed to stay professional until that second, keeping my dignity intact. But now, all I could hear was the sound of Chelsea's voice in our old apartment, saying I was too small for the life she wanted, that I would always be just comfort, not ambition. Now here she was, in front of a table full of professionals, asking for me. Like none of that had ever happened. Diana cleared her throat. We're in the middle of something important, actually. Can it wait? Chelsea hesitated, then shook her head. No, it really can't. Everyone looked at me like I was the one who had to give permission. And maybe I was. So I stood slowly, trying to steady my voice, my legs, my whole damn body. We can talk outside, I said. The hallway was quiet. She walked ahead of me, like she still needed control of the situation, like she couldn't help herself. We stopped by the elevator. She turned to face me. Her eyes were red, but no fresh tears. She looked tired in a way that makeup couldn't hide. I didn't sleep, she started. I've been thinking all night. About us. About what I did. I didn't say anything. She looked down. I know I don't deserve your time. I know that. But yesterday shook something loose in me. I don't even recognize the person I've become. And when I saw you, when I saw how composed you were, how solid, I realized I made the worst mistake of my life. A pause. I was wrong, Darren. There it was. The confession. The sentence I used to fantasize about when I was sleeping alone on our old couch, wondering what I'd done to make her stop loving me. But now, it didn't land the way she thought it would. I looked her in the eyes. Chelsea, I said, carefully, you weren't wrong for wanting more. You were wrong for thinking you had to destroy me to get it. She flinched like I slapped her. I didn't mean to. You did, I cut in gently. You just didn't think I'd recover. She took a shaky breath. Can we at least talk? Like, privately? Not here. I shook my head. I don't think that's a good idea. She blinked. Why not? Because I've already had the conversation you're trying to start, I said. I just had it 3 years ago. With myself. Every night. Every morning. Every day, I tried to rebuild my life without you. She stared at me like I was speaking a language she didn't know. And then she whispered, so that's it? After everything, you're just walking away? I gave her the same nod she gave me the night she walked out with her suitcases. The one that says I'm done explaining who I am to someone who never wanted to know. She watched me walk away this time. But I didn't look back. I didn't think I'd hear from her again. After the hallway, after the look on her face when I walked away, I thought that was the final page. A clean break. I even felt lighter the next morning, like I'd finally closed a chapter that had been rotting in my chest for 3 years. But closure, it turns out, is rarely clean. Especially when it comes to people like Chelsea. The week moved on. Fast. Our branding project went into final revisions, and I buried myself in drafts and timelines, working late just to stay busy. Diana was impressed. She mentioned something about extending my contract into the next quarter. I said I'd think about it, but honestly, I was more interested in avoiding feelings than making plans. Then Friday came. It started like any other morning. Coffee, inbox chaos, someone printing way too loudly next to my desk. Around 11 a.m., Diana poked her head in and said, "Hey, weird thing, someone dropped something off for you at reception." My heart ticked once. Then again. I stood slowly. Who? She didn't leave a name, Diana shrugged. Just said it was important. I walked down the hall, not sure what to expect. Maybe a file? A thank you card from a client? But when the receptionist handed me the plain white envelope, my hands already knew what my brain hadn't admitted yet. It was her handwriting. Slanted, sharp, deliberate. The way she used to write grocery lists like she was planning a speech. She didn't even write my name on the outside. Just read me, please. I took it back to my desk, closed the door, sat for a long minute with the envelope in my lap like it might explode. And then I opened it. The letter wasn't long, but it hit like a freight train. No melodrama, no manipulation, just the raw kind of truth that only surfaces when there's nothing left to protect. Darren, I wrote this a dozen times and tore it up every time. You were never the problem. I was. I kept trying to climb higher without realizing I was cutting the rope behind me. You were the only person who ever stood still when I was spiraling, and I confused that with being stuck. I thought the world would reward me for choosing ambition, and it did for a while. Promotions, travel, applause. But no one cared when I got sick. No one brought me soup. No one held my hand when I had my first panic attack in an airport. No one knew that I used to be married to the kindest man I've ever known. And by the time I realized what I'd lost, you were already someone else. If you hate me, I understand. But if there's any part of you that still remembers who we were, just know I do now. I remember. Every day. See, I didn't cry. I thought I might, but I didn't. I just sat there for a long time, the paper shaking in my hands, reading the same sentence over and over. You were never the problem. I was. That's the sentence I used to beg the universe to make her say. And now that she had, I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel angry. I just felt tired. It wasn't about revenge anymore, or even redemption. It was just the final echo of something that used to be alive. I folded the letter carefully, placed it back in the envelope, and locked it in the drawer of my desk. Not to hide it, to preserve it. Because sometimes, the most painful truth is the one that arrives too late, but still matters. I should have taken the letter home, locked it away, burned it, shredded it. Anything but what I actually did. Leave it in my desk drawer overnight, thinking that closed doors and passwords would protect something so personal. I thought I was being careful. But the thing about old wounds is they always find the wrong eyes. It was Monday afternoon when things started to feel off. I noticed Diana giving me quick, unreadable glances during our morning sync. People whispered a little too quickly when I passed. One guy from the finance team smiled at me in that weird way people do when they know something they shouldn't. I brushed it off, told myself I was imagining it. Until 4:17 p.m. That's when I got the message. Not from Chelsea. From Amanda, one of the junior analysts. We'd only ever spoken in passing, and even then, barely. Her message was short. Hey, sorry if this is out of line, but I think someone saw that letter in your desk. You should check with Diana before this turns into something worse. My heart dropped. I left my keyboard mid-keystroke and walked straight to Diana's office. She looked up the second I walked in. No smile. Just a sigh like she'd been waiting for this. Close the door, she said. I did. She leaned back, eyes heavy. How long were you planning to keep me in the dark? I blinked. About what? About you and Chelsea. I froze. She's your ex-wife, Darren. You never mentioned that. And now she's showing up to company events crying, leaving personal letters in your name at the front desk, and half the team thinks you're having some kind of breakdown. I'm not. I know you're not. She interrupted, more gently. But it doesn't matter what's true. It matters what people think. That stung. I sat down slowly. Who read the letter? She hesitated. I don't know for sure. But it wasn't me. I nodded once. Then she added, it was left in your unlocked drawer, Darren. In a shared workspace. I didn't think. Clearly, I wanted to fight it. To defend myself. But what was I going to say? That I was still haunted by a woman who shattered me 3 years ago? That her apology came in the form of 6 paragraphs and a tear-stained envelope? That I didn't throw it away because part of me still didn't know what to do with it? I looked at Diana and saw something in her eyes I didn't expect. Disappointment. Not because I had an ex who wrecked me, but because I had let that wreckage into her company, into her tight-knit team. You're good at what you do, she said quietly. But I need to know that whatever this is, it's not going to bleed into the project. It won't, I said quickly. It's done. Is it? I hesitated. And that was all the answer she needed. I'm not firing you, she said. But you need to clean this up. Whatever this is between you and her, it doesn't belong here. I nodded. I left her office with my jaw clenched so tight it hurt. And when I got back to my desk, the letter was gone. Not moved. Not misfiled. Gone. I don't know who took it. I don't know if it was copied, shared, or screenshotted into oblivion. All I know is, by the time I got back, the drawer was closed and the envelope was missing. Chelsea's words? Out in the world now. Floating somewhere I couldn't control. exposed in the worst way. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like the victim anymore. I felt like someone who had just lost control of a story he never wanted anyone else to read. By Tuesday, the entire office knew. I wasn't told directly. No one sent me an email or confronted me in the hallway. But I could feel it. The quiet that follows a scandal. The way people paused when I walked into the kitchen. The sudden, awkward politeness. The complete absence of eye contact. Someone had shared the letter. Not just read it. They shared it. I sat at my desk, staring at my screen, watching the blinking cursor in an empty email draft. Every part of me wanted to scream. Not because of the humiliation. That ship had sailed. I was used to being misunderstood. But because that letter was never meant for public eyes. Not the intern in logistics. Not the sales guy 2 desks over. And certainly not the damn marketing Slack channel where someone had apparently dropped screenshots. It wasn't just gossip now. It was entertainment. That's what burned the most. I was trying to figure out what to do, whether to send a statement, quit, punch a wall, when my phone lit up. Chelsea. I didn't answer. I couldn't. But her message came through instantly. What did you do with my letter? Then another. Did you share it? Then one more, just a voice note. I didn't even press play. I didn't need to. I could feel the rage behind every word. She didn't call again. Instead, 5 hours later, she showed up. Again. No warning. No invitation. Just stormed past reception like she owned the floor. I saw her through the glass wall of the hallway, heels stabbing the carpet, lips pressed into a fury I hadn't seen since the week before she left me. People looked up from their desks. A few pretended not to notice, but it was useless. Chelsea's energy filled the room like a thunderclap. She walked straight into Diana's office. Diana didn't even look surprised, just calmly stood up and closed the blinds. Whatever was said in that room, I didn't hear it, but I didn't need to. The fallout arrived within the hour. I was called into HR. A woman I'd never spoken to before was suddenly talking to me like I'd just committed a federal crime. She used words like breach of privacy, internal concern, professional discretion. I kept saying I hadn't shared the letter, that I hadn't even told anyone about it, that it had been taken. They believed me, but only halfway. We're not accusing you, she said in the same tone people use when they are. But it's important we manage perception. Perception. The word again. I left the meeting feeling like a man walking out of a courtroom after being told, "You're free to go, but we all still think you're guilty." By the time I got back to my desk, Chelsea was gone. But not before she left her mark. A single post-it note was stuck to the center of my monitor, written in the same handwriting from the letter. It said, "You broke the last thing I had left." And for the first time since she walked out 3 years ago, I didn't feel angry. I felt done. The twisted part of all of this. I didn't leak the letter, but in some cold, cruel way. I was glad it happened. Because Chelsea had spent years walking through life without consequences. Leaving, rewriting, replacing. And now, finally, she couldn't control the story anymore. She'd been exposed. Not by me. Not directly. But by the truth. And when it spilled into the world, raw and unfiltered, it didn't paint her the way she wanted. It painted her real. By Friday, the letter had faded from office gossip. That's the thing about scandal. It burns fast, then turns to ash. People moved on. The Slack messages vanished. Whispers gave way to deadlines. A newer, shinier drama took its place. I stayed quiet, kept my head down, and let the noise pass. But Chelsea didn't. I heard through a side conversation in the elevator that she'd taken a mental health leave. Unofficial, of course. No one called it that. But her assistant was rerouting her calls and her office lights stayed off all week. I didn't ask for details. I didn't need to. The last words she left me, "You broke the last thing I had left," still rang in my head. But something about it didn't sting anymore. It wasn't my job to carry her guilt. Not anymore. She had written her truth, and in some poetic twist of karma, it found the light without me lifting a finger. But my life kept going. In fact, it got better. That same Friday, Diana called me in after hours. I assumed it was for another damage control update. But when I stepped into her office, she surprised me. "I read the letter," she said plainly. I froze. She looked up, eyes calm. Not before, but after. When it started circulating, I asked to see the original. HR gave me a copy. I didn't know what to say. She continued. It was heartbreakingly honest. "I'm sorry it happened like that, but I also think it revealed something most people missed." "What's that?" She gave a small smile. You've rebuilt yourself from the ground up. And you did it without turning bitter. Most people carry their pain like a weapon. You turned yours into patience. That's rare. I blinked. Thanks. But I'm not sure where this is going. She handed me a folder. Inside was a formal offer. Full-time lead designer, permanent contract, full benefits, full trust. She even added a note in pen. I want you here. Long term. I stared at it for a full minute. Diana raised an eyebrow. You okay? I just never thought this version of my life would be possible. She smiled. Most good things start that way. I accepted the offer that night. And 2 weeks later, I moved into a new apartment. Bigger, brighter, far from the one I used to share with Chelsea. No ghost furniture. No shared closets. Just sunlight, peace, and a studio space where I could finally paint again without it feeling like therapy. I never responded to Chelsea's last message. I never needed to. She told me she still thought about me. But the truth is, I didn't think about her anymore. Not with anger. Not with longing. Just with peace. Some people are chapters. Others are entire books. Chelsea was a chapter. And I finally stopped rereading it.